Hey adventurers, so today is going to be the quarter 2 MBR. This is the might be read list that I have for quarter 2, which is April, May, June. And I'll also quickly go over quarter 1 and how I did with that, what the books I had for that month or for that quarter were and which ones I read of them. I did pretty good with it. So anyways, let's get started. Quarter 1, I had this split into holdovers and new additions. So the holdovers were books that I had started previously in previous months and was still reading, and then the new additions were the ones that I was adding to the MBR that I wanted to maybe read that month. So for holdovers, I had Shadow Rising and The Dead Zone. I did finish reading The Dead Zone. And then for new additions, I had Secret Project number 1, Sanderson's Secret Project number 1. I had Brotherhood of the Wolf, which is Rune Lord's book 2. I had Simulated, which is the Calculated series by Nova McBee, book 2. I had The Fellowship of the Ring, which is Lord of the Rings part 1 by Tolkien. I had Sun, which is the 4th book in the Giver Quartet by Lois Lowry. I had Tales from the Perilous Realm by J.R. Tolkien, and I had The Two Towers by Tolkien, which is part 2 of Lord of the Rings. I had Activated, which is Calculated book 3 by Nova McBee. Wizardborn, which is the 3rd book in the Rune Lords by David Farland. Let's see, it had the Return of the King, which is part 3 of Lord of the Rings by Tolkien. I had Lair of Bones, which is book 4 of the Rune Lords by David Farland. The Once and Future King by T.H. White. Thrawn by Timothy Zahn. The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson. More Than a Gunslinger by J.R. Carroll. And then Bone Shroud by Andrew D. Meredith. So those were the books that I had for quarter 1. The ones that I finished were The Dead Zone, which was a holdover, and then of the new editions I finished Sacred Project number 1, Brotherhood of the Wolf, Simulated, The Fellowship of the Ring, Sun, The Two Towers, Activated, Wizardborn, The Return of the King, The Lair of Bones, The Emperor's Soul, More Than a Gunslinger, and Bone Shroud. So the ones that I didn't finish would have been Tales from the Perilous Realm, although that one was never intended to be, I have to sit down and read this cover to cover immediately. It was one that, it's a collection of stories, and so pick a story, read the story, and I have done that. I read all of the, what is it called? The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, and I read a good chunk of Roverandom, so I'm fine with not having completely finished that one up. The other ones that I haven't finished are The Once and Future King, but I have started it, and Thrawn by Timothy Zahn. I actually have the physical book right here. Thrawn, I have it, own it. I'm gonna probably listen to it on audiobook. I put a hold on it from my library, and I'm just waiting for it to show up because I've been busy and haven't had time to physically read it. So, into quarter 2 of those books that are, I added a new, what is this called? A new category, a new category, and that is the unread category, meaning I haven't even started them. And the only book that belongs in that category from last month or from last quarter is Thrawn by Timothy Zahn. So I do intend to read this whenever the audiobooks comes. I'll listen to it, especially now with the continuation and what has recently been announced regarding Thrawn at Star Wars Celebration Europe, which has been going on the past couple of days and will continue from the time that I am filming this, which is Saturday the 8th? April 8th. Okay. So that's the unread category. Of the holdovers category, I still have Shadow Rising, which is Wheel of Time book 4 right here. Still have it. Still working my way through it, about 3 pages a week maybe. So, and I haven't read any on that in a while. I do want to get through it. I do really want to get through Shadow Rising, get into the rest of the series, and just blow through it. But at the moment, I'm not focusing on Wheel of Time. I'm not too worried about it. I just don't care at this point. Other holdovers: Tales from the Perilous Realm by J.R. Tolkien. As I mentioned, I've read The Adventures of Tom Bombadil, and I have started Roverandom. I'm loving Roverandom. I loved Adventures of Tom Bombadil. It's just poetry. I love poetry, but it's great. Roverandom feels a lot like The Hobbit in terms of the writing and the way that the story is told, and I love that. So I will be continuing more of this. I will finish Roverandom at least in this quarter. I'd love to finish the entire book, but we'll see what happens with that. Other holdovers: The Once and Future King by T.H. White. This is a Arthurian retelling by T.H. White. It's considered one of the staples of Arthurian literature at this point. Everybody sings its praise very, very highly. I'm not loving it at the moment. It's okay. It's very readable, but it's the story that's being told and the world that is set up is not my favorite. It tends to not take the Arthurian mythos as seriously as I feel like it deserves. It seems to be a bit too flippant with it, I guess. That being said, hopefully by the end of the book, I'll have come around and be enjoying the book. So on to the new editions. First we've got Secret Project number 2 by Brandon Sanderson. This is the official title of this one. If you don't want to hear it, I'll put a timestamp that you can skip it, but the official title is The Frugal Wizard's Handbook to Surviving Medieval England. And I have already read this book, and the review should already be out for this book. The next one is Sons of the Oak by David Farland. This is Rune Lord's book 5. I have discussed with Nico, who is my partner in this buddy read that I'm doing of this series, and Nico from Nico's Book Reviews, and we have decided that we're gonna take a break in April and not read a book. We were planning on reading a book a month because there's other people who have jumped in onto this read along with us several months after we had started it. I wanted to give them the opportunity to catch up without having to just binge the series, especially if they get burnt out from binging series like that. And so I wanted to give them a bit of time and some space so that they could catch up on the series easy enough. So this quarter there will only be 2 books that we're planning on reading. That is the 5th book, which is Sons of the Oak, and the 6th book, which is Worldbinder. I don't own Worldbinder physically. I only own 3 of these books physically, 1, 5, and 8, and I'm of course continuing to look at them look for them because I love the covers, I love the cover art on them, but I also have been loving the series. So I'm very excited to continue with this, but we are skipping April, or taking a break in April and then picking it back up in May. What have we got next? So I mentioned Worldbinder, which is book 6, that we'll be reading June. Book 6 will be in June. Then we've got Taliesin by Stephen R. Lawhead. This is the first book in the Pendragon cycle. I am trying to continue my reading Arthurian literature because I love Arthurian literature. So my goal was to read The Once and Future King, finish that up, and then after Once and Future King, I was going to read the Pendragon cycle. This is a 4-book series: Taliesin, Merlin, Arthur, and Pendragon. Oh, I guess maybe it's a 5-book series with Grail being the 5th book. Is that what it is? Yeah, that sounds right. Merlin, Arthur, Pendragon, Grail. Okay, so that's the series. It's a 5-book series. Anyways, I do plan on reading this. I haven't started it yet. I'm waiting until I finish The Once and Future King, and that'll be my next Arthurian. After that is the Pendragon cycle. Next, I've got Beowulf by who knows. But this, I do have the Seamus Heaney translation. I have another translation by another guy that I can't remember their name. But I'll probably be reading Seamus Heaney translation. This is another one that I have needed to read for so long. It is so influential on Tolkien and on the fantasy genre as a whole, and the fact that I haven't read it is embarrassing. But I do plan on reading this possibly, most likely this month meaning April, because David Wiley and Steve Donahue and I think several others are also planning on reading this, and it's just nice to be able to be involved in the conversation if possible. If not, it's fine. If I don't get to it this month, I'm not worried about it. I do plan on reading it this quarter though. Then we have The Legend of Blackjack by A.R. Witham. This is one that I've known about since it came out. I have talked to the author. I have talked to several other people who have read this book, and I know I'm gonna love this book, and that I just haven't read it yet, and I really, really need to. I may try and get the audiobook for this one because I know that actually A.R. Witham, Andy, did the narration for this one as well, and it's supposedly really good as well. So I may get the audiobook so that I can fly through it quicker, but if not, I have the physical book because I knew that I wanted it, and it has illustrations. So that alone is enough to make me want to read it. I don't really know a whole lot about this book other than that it is a it's like a YA, what are the words I'm looking for? YA portal fantasy with a chosen one trope, and all those things I like. And from what I understand, it's not YA in the immature nature that YA often has. It's YA in the content and in the tone that it is written in, and I appreciate all those things. What else have we got? Les Miserables. So this is my big classic for the quarter that I'm planning on reading. Sometimes I plan to read more than one classic in a quarter, sometimes not. Les Mis is just one of those seminal pieces of literature that I need to read, and I haven't yet, but I do have it on Audible, so I'll be listening to that fairly soon. That might, it's either my next audiobook or like 1 or 2 out. So it's coming up soon, and I'm excited to read it. That's by Victor Hugo, if you don't know. Then we've got Rebel's Creed by Daniel B. Green. This is one that I have had since it came out, and since I bought it pretty soon after it released in 2021, and I haven't read it yet. I forgot about how much I enjoyed book 1, which book 1 is Breach of Peace. And then I was watching a review by, who was the review by that I was watching? Book Blather. So that's who it was. Book Blather just did a review of Breach of Peace 3 days ago at the time of filming this. And I watched the review, and he reminded me, his discussion reminded me of how much I enjoyed the process of reading Breach of Peace, and that reminded me, oh, I still need to read Rebel's Creed. So Rebel's Creed I will probably end up listening to, because he does have the audiobook uploaded onto his YouTube channel. Daniel B. Green does. Daniel Green is his YouTube channel. But so it's likely that I will end up listening to the audiobook, and if not, I have the physical book right here to read. I was reminded that I do want to read this book, and so I will be reading that at some point, hopefully this quarter. I've got The Children of Húrin by J.R.R. Tolkien. I have long considered this to be my favorite of Tolkien's stories. Not my favorite book, because book involves the process of reading, the experience of reading the book, the copy that you're reading, if it's a nice hardcover or an illustrated edition. And so there's lots of things that go into my favorite book, but my favorite story specifically, and that's because it's a tragedy and it's sad and it's heartbreaking and I love it. Also, it's got some great fantasy action like dragons and stuff like that, and it's just really cool. Lots of amazing stuff in this book. But I've needed to reread it for years, and I have the audiobook narrated by Sir Christopher Lee. And so I'm very excited to reread this on audio, because it's been a very long time since I have read this, and I am excited to do so again. Then we've got, I have 2 Redwall books planned for this quarter, or at least MBR might be read this quarter. The first one that I have listed is Triss, which is about a young female squirrel. I don't remember a whole lot about this book, honestly. Actually, will it tell me anything about it in this book? No, it won't. Anyways, all of that I seem to remember is it's a bit of a seafaring pirate book. And so I'm excited for that, because I mean, first off, it's Redwall. I love the Redwall books. I love Brian Jakes' writing, but he does seafaring really well. And so I am excited to get back into Redwall and to read Triss and refamiliarize myself with that story, because it's been years since I last listened to that to that book, to the audiobook. And the other one is Outcast of Redwall. This is probably one of my top 3 Redwall books. I have long considered Matameo, the Tagarung, and Outcast of Redwall to be my top 3 Redwall, and I think that's probably still the case. I need to reread Outcast, and I need to reread Tagarung, but that'll be later in the year. Anyways, I'm very excited to reread both of these. I will probably try and do them on audio, just because it's so easy, and the audiobooks are phenomenal. The full cast, the narration by Brian Jakes himself, and the full cast narration of the rest of the characters and everything, it's so good. They're so well done. So I'll probably try and listen to them on audiobook. If not, I have Outcasts physically, and Triss I'm not afraid to buy it. I'll buy it if I need to. Then we've got The Last of the Mohicans by James Fenimore Cooper. This is another book that I guess I do have 2 classics on this list. That's alright. I like classics. I like these stories. This is one that I have needed to read forever. As probably longer than I have realized that I needed to read Les Mis, honestly. I love the movie. I actually have watched one Les Mis movie years and years ago. I don't even remember what Les Mis movie it was, but I've watched one Les Mis and it was great. I need to read for the first time this book as well as Les Mis. I love this movie. I know the story, approximately what the story is supposed to be. I'm very excited to read this book, and hopefully that'll be this year. I might listen to it, or this quarter. I might listen to it on Audible. I might listen to it on audiobook. I'm not sure yet. I don't know why I keep mixing up Audible and audiobook. They're different things. Anyways, we've got Nevada by Zane Grey. I like Westerns. I really like Westerns. I really like Louis L'Amour, and that's who I've read the most of, but I have read 2 Zane Grey so far, and both of them have been phenomenal. So I'm very excited to read Nevada. This is a smaller book. This is only 200 pages rather than the 300 to 400 that I think The Desert of Wheat was like 350, and I think Desert Gold, I believe is what it was called, was 450, maybe even 500 pages, something like that. So this one is significantly shorter, but that's alright. I'm excited to read it because I love what I've read of Zane Grey, and I love Westerns. The last one that I have on this list is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This is one that I've had on my shelf. I found the 3 books, the first Red Rising trilogy, Red Rising, Golden Sun, and Morning Star. I found them at the used bookstore. All 3 of them, very nice condition. The Morning Star has a bend in the cover and a crease, wrinkle, whatever. But other than that, very good condition. And so I picked them up because they were cheap and they were in good condition, and I'd heard a lot about them. And I know some of my booktube friends love this series. Tori, I think, loves this series. There's several other people who just love this series, and I don't know that I will, but I do like Hunger Games. I think Hunger Games is underrated, in some aspects, overrated in others, but I am excited to read that book and see what I think about it, because I also need to continue reading science fiction, and that is a sci-fi book. So that is my quarter 2 MBR, and we will see how things go. As you can clearly see, I've already completed one of the books of this quarter, and a lot of them won't be an issue for me. I do try and put several audiobooks on this as well as physical books, because I really realistically only read about 1 physical book a month, maybe 2 if they're short enough. So I try to balance the fact that I would have 3 books on the MBR by throwing in a bunch of books that I either already plan to listen to on audiobook, or else that I am willing to listen to them on audiobook. My brain is not flowing correctly. Anyway, so we will wrap this up. That is my MBR for quarter 2. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.